Hello everybody, I'm Don Counts and we're at the Warrior Exhibit here in Fayetteville, Tennessee. This is a place where the pictorial exhibit to honor all the Lincoln County residents who served in the U.S. military. And today our guest is Mr. Dexter Sullivan. Hello Dexter.
Hey Don.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you grew up and what led you into the military.
Okay, well, I was born and raised in Fayetteville, Tennessee. I was really born in Belleville, but nobody knows where that is, so it's Fayetteville. I was here basically all my life except for 1 year when I moved to Elkton in the 8th grade. Came back. My daddy was principal in Elkton for 1 year. Came back and was a freshman at Central High School. Stayed all through that. Went to University of Tennessee, graduated from there in '65. After I graduated from the University of Tennessee, I went to work at Allied Chemical in Richmond, Virginia. One of my roommates, Bob Clark, well, let me back up just a minute. Got a notice from the draft board. They said they wanted me to join. And I decided that I didn't think I wanted to join the Army. I wanted to look into other services, so I looked into the Marine Corps. Meanwhile, I had my roommate, Bob Clark, joined the Marine Corps, and he went in the class before I did at Quantico. We both went to OCS. OCS is a 10-week program where they weed you out physically in OCS. It's different from Parris Island. They weed you out mentally in Parris Island. But most of them are college graduates in OCS, so they figure that you can't mind game those, so they just try to grind you down mentally, not mentally, physically. And we started off with 40 in the platoon, and we wound up with 25. One of the first ones to go out was a former football player at the University at Virginia Tech. They ground him down real quick. After OCS, the Marine Corps sends you to the basic school, TBS, and that's located also at Quantico.
And what's TBS?
The basic school.
Gotcha.
That's where you learn how to be an officer. You learn how to, all the protocol, and you learn some of the military portions of you learn how to be an officer, and you learn things that you need to know as an officer. For instance, navigation. You need to know how to find yourself out and get out of the woods. And let's see. One of the things they do at basic school is the latter part of basic school is they have what you call a 3-day war. That's where you play like you're in war, and you're out in the boonies. You don't get much to eat. You don't get much sleep. It's a really demanding, I think they call it the crucible now.
The real deal.
It's a real deal. If you got good facilities about yourself, it's not the real deal, but right. If you were sort of worn down and a little stressed out, you might not. One of the things that happened during the 3-day war was they were transporting us from A to B in a helicopter. There was somebody that was really dumb and took a flash photograph, so the pilots thought it was a fire in there. The really dumb person was me. The next day, the captain of the platoon talked to me about how that was really stupid, and I agreed with him. But it had a good thing, because I think to this day, there was 4 of us that I think were his going to be goods. He was testing us, seeing if we could handle it. And they went. One of them went in tanks. All the rest of them went into infantry. I didn't get infantry, which I didn't want it anyway. So that was one good thing about that. So My MOS was Hawk missiles. That's homing all the way killer missiles. The mission of the Hawk missile battery is to protect the base for the aircraft, so that the opposing foes can't bomb the airfield. So the Hawk missile was a very good military system, military piece of equipment, but the United States never, Never, fired one in anger.
Wow.
Now the Israelis, really popped them off, and they scored a lot of hits. And the Hawk missile battery is now no longer. It's obsolete.
What was so special about that particular missile?
Well, it was mobile. You could take it from A to B fairly quick. It was what they call a homing all the way killer. So it would lock on to the missile or the aircraft moving toward or moving away from it. You can just get the Doppler effect is another term they use for it.
High tech for that time.
High tech. It was a good It was a good system. We should never have anybody to shoot at. So lucky for them.
That's
But
right.
it was never tested. And Raytheon made a bunch, and it never was really tested in combat. So, all right. Now well, before we go from there, the people in TBS, we had just sort of like a dorm atmosphere, or not dorm, but apartment type thing. There's four guys in a suite running. Don't get confused, that's not that fancy, but at least it was that configuration.
What year was this?
Let's see, that was 1966. 1966. One of the guys in our suite was David Thompson. He was from Indiana. He was a skydiver. David probably just barely made it at the minimum because he was a short guy. One of these little man attitudes. He had a little man attitude. Good guy. But he was a skydiver, and he taught me and two other guys in the skydiving. Meanwhile, the people at TBS basic school had a school on skydiving. Now that wasn't a part of the military training, not a part of the Marine training. It was sort of R&R kind of stuff. They taught us how to skydive. Really, they just taught us how to land, and that's the most important part is landing. But you had to be an experienced skydiver before you could jump out of military aircraft. That was just one of the rules. So David took me over to Manassas, Virginia. If you've heard any Civil War history, yes, that's where it was. Went over there and jumped out of an aircraft. I think I paid $15. It was, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to jump at first. I mean, I was out on the wing ready to go push off, and I didn't want to do it. And David kept hollering at me, and so I said, "Oh, what's the matter?" So I jumped. I let go and jumped. So I went back to my training, and now I was an experienced skydiver. One jump, I'm experienced. So, all right. Then went to my first duty station was Cherry Point, North Carolina. That's where the Hawk missile batteries were stationed on the East Coast. They had one on the East Coast and West Coast. Meantime, there was Stanley, my brother, enlisted in the Marine Corps about that time. He was trained at Parris Island, and then he went to advanced infantry training at Camp Lejeune. Camp Lejeune is about 30 miles south of Cherry Point. So I drove down there one day and we had a beer. And he went to Vietnam April the 1st, 1967. He participated in Operation Prairie View 2 on April the 10th. So it didn't give him very much time to get acclimated. And even 9 days later, he was out in the thick of it. I sent him a 6-pack of beer that wasn't packaged very good. You knew exactly what it was when it arrived. But he said they let him have it, and he said it sure was great to enjoy the beer while he was relaxed, greater than 2 beer limit, even though it was hot. I sent him a reel-to-reel player, and I'm talking reel-to-reel. It just had the tape and round around. We're talking 67 now, 66, 67. So he could listen to country music. Mother would tape it, send it to him. Then he would send us messages in the tape recorder. And one of the things I remember he got upset was that he said, I've just spent 30 damn minutes talking into the recorder and I didn't have the right button pushed, so I got to start all over again.
I've done that before.
Yeah, haven't we all?
So, all right. July the 4th, 1967, I participated in a skydiving exhibition at the Officers Club at Cherry Point. Every chance we got, the skydiving club got to put on an exhibit, we'd do it. We could jump, so that's what we wanted to do, is we wanted to jump. And so they asked us to do an exhibition at the country club, Officers Club in Cherry Point. And we combined it we combined it with a water jump. So we ended up landing in the water. Cherry Point is right on the ocean. Not right on the ocean, but it's got a fjord that connects and everything. So that was a good thing. The guy, 2 of us jumped, me and another guy. He had 450 jumps, I had 70. So he was a little bit more experienced than I was. He already had his water jump. That's one of the things you had to do to get a higher rating in the parachutist world is landing in water. The greatest percentage of parachuting deaths is by drowning. I didn't know that. That was something I always remembered. All right.
So you have to do release before you hit the water. You don't want to go in the water with a parachute.
You have quick release. You're hooked on the chest and on 2 legs, on your legs. So you have everything else unhooked. And when you go into the water, you pull the 2 leg things there. So you don't want to do it too high.
That's right.
Yeah. So you're supposed to, just as your feet hit the water, pull the leg straps. Had some teenage boys that was trying to be real helpful, and they were in a boat to save us. Well, they got right under me, and I didn't want to land on them because it might hurt them, but more importantly, it might hurt me. So,
Yeah.
So you can guide the parachute, right, left. You can guide it a little bit other way, but it was, the water was right there, so I had to pull it pretty quick to get away from them. July 4th, 67 in Vietnam, the Company K, 3rd Battalion, 9th Marines, was given the task of recovering wounded and or dead from a previous engagement. They arrived there and got online, walking across the thing. Stanley found a booby trap bomb. He was tracing the wire out into the woods and everything. And he didn't get too far, and a concealed enemy popped up and killed him. They recovered the body that day, so that was a good part of that. The NVA and VC knew that that's what the Marines did. Marines didn't leave their wounded, didn't leave their people there.
How long after his death did you find out, you and your family?
2 days later. His comrades put in not a request, but a recommendation that he be awarded some sort of medal because his finding the wire and tracing it out triggered the ambush before it was supposed to happen. If they had gone a little bit further, they would have been, the enemy would have been concentrated on both sides and behind, so he saved a bunch of lives that day, they said.
Good.
30 years later, a guy that was in another platoon, Larry Stevenus, who got to be real friendly with Stanley, he liked country music too, came to visit me about 30 years later, and he asked if Stanley had ever got the medal, and I said no, and he got mad. And he said, well, we're going to see something about that. So he shook the bushes and got in contact with the company commander during that to, see if they couldn't get something done about it. 30 years, it was too late. So that, couldn't do anything about that. July the 6th, I was called into the battalion commander's office, and I was serving as battery commander that day because the battery commander had gone take off. And I said, oh crap, what am I going to have to do? So I went in and he told me. And of course, it was like being hit with a baseball bat. I went into another room and cried. No Marine in me that day. Came back out and asked him if he had any information. He didn't. So I went and found the company commander, the battery commander, and told him I was going home. And the platoon, the battery clerks liked me, and they had emergency leave orders for me before I even got back. So got as far as Atlanta, couldn't get any further. Spent the night at Kay Stewart's apartment. She wasn't there. I dated her, but not for a while. And next morning, went on into Fayetteville. Somebody from Serbian picked me up, took me out there, took me home. So I was able to make the arrangements for Stanley's body to be shipped home, which helped Mother and Daddy quite a bit because they were pretty messed up. My grandmother and granddaddy were at the house too, so we went in the kitchen and I saved them that pain.
Where did y'all live?
First Avenue, 714. That's where she lives right now.
Wow.
She's been there since I was in the 4th grade. I don't know what year that was.
Wow.
Long time ago. Arranged for Stanley to be brought home. One of the things the Marines will let you do is have somebody to escort the body home. I called Bud Mars. I don't know if you know Bud. I don't know if Don knows him. Probably not. He was one of the best friends of Stanley. And I called Bud. He was in the Marine Corps at that time. And I said, would you escort Stanley's body home? And he said, I don't want to, but I don't want anybody else to do it. So he agreed. I also got Roy McKinney, and he did it too. I had, since soon as Stanley got orders for Vietnam, I put in a request, expedited request, to be sent to Vietnam, transferred to Vietnam. Because if you have two members in the family, one can come home if they want to. Of course, the orders came through in September, which was a little bit too late. But when Stanley was killed, as soon as I got back, well, a month or so later, got back and told them I'd like to delay my orders when they came in because of Stanley's death. The battalion pencil pushers got upset at me for doing that, and I blew hot and was about to go clean their plow, but the battery clerk said, cool it, we've taken care of it. They won't bother you anymore. But I just didn't like that at all. So delayed until January 68 is when I went over. Now there's a guy named James Schaeffler who wrote a book, died on the 4th of July, which he's got just about everybody. Well, I'm not real sure. I have to look at the book again. I don't know if it's just Marines or what, but it was the ones who died on the 4th of July, and that's in the excerpt is in there. The I don't know if it's interesting or whatever, but there was 20 or so of people in that platoon, on that company, K39, that were killed on that day. It's got a list of the names up there that were in K39. Another interesting thing about it is there was one officer that was killed. There was 2 or 3 E2s, that's Lance Corporal, and the rest of them were PFCs, E1. E1 is the lowest rank you can have, and E2 is not very much higher, and 1 second lieutenant was killed. So that, just shows you they're ground beef. All right, so delayed my transfer to Vietnam until January 68. Flew to Okinawa, and that was a stopping in place where they checked and make sure you had all your shots. Being an engineer and being Dexter, I went and had all my shots, most of my shots. I had to take one. There was a guy that I met just then, that day or whatever, and he had to take 20-something shots because he didn't do that. And I think most of them were, butt shots. He maybe had some arm shots, but he wasn't very happy about that. Flew into Da Nang the first night. I landed in Da Nang. It was late. I really don't remember meeting anybody or talking to anybody. They told me where to go. I know that, so I met somebody. They didn't offer me anything to eat. I slept in a tent by myself, big tent. I could stand up on a canvas cot, no pillow, no blanket, nothing. So I had to get up and I had to go pee-pee, had to go urinate sometime during the night. And the way military does is, I'm sure it's military, surely the Marines didn't think this, but they have a piss tube was a round pipe about that big around, that had been driven into the ground. And of course in Da Nang is sand. So you just, urinated into the tube. No building, no nothing. So it was dark as, it was dark. Of course, before you go over there and during all your training, you hear all the war stories that come back from Vietnam. The biggest war story is that people go over there and the first time they're on Vietnam soil, they get killed. Even some of them coming off the plane. That ain't true, but that's what they tell. So I was a little bit anxious. So I had a fence, but also the bamboo had grown up, so it was almost impenetrable. You couldn't see through it, but you knew the Vietnamese people were on the other side. So I finished my business and getting ready to go, and about as I getting ready to go back, a guy came out of the outhouse and opened the door. And of course, it hadn't been greased in 20 or 30 days or years, whatever, but it was a very loud screech, and being all tensed up and everything. I nearly pooped in my pants because it scared the heck out of me.
I can imagine.
All right, I was stationed in Chulai. We had to fly down. It's about 30, 40 miles, 50 miles maybe, south of Da Nang. We had to fly down because the land, the ground was controlled by non-friendlies, so you couldn't go that way. It was almost like you wasn't in a war zone when I got to Second Battalion, I think. It was a Hawk Battery, and the houses were what I call chicken shack houses. Got plywood up about 4 or 5 feet, plywood floor, tin roof, screen after it gets up, 4 feet, so it'd keep all the bugs out. Had hot showers, had 3 hot meals a day, had on order breakfast. You could order it. It wasn't served to you, but you could order it. They had an outdoor theater. I didn't go to it. Wasn't there long enough to go. And I don't know if anybody went, but it was like a drive-in theater, but it was chairs on the side of a hill, a big screen. So pretty nice. The duty over there was boring. Really, really boring. Because, as I said, we were guarding the air base from enemy air attack. The North Vietnamese, the Vietcong for sure didn't have any aircraft. And the North Vietnamese didn't have any aircraft south of the DMZ. So there was never a aircraft attack from the Vietnamese, North Vietnamese anyway, in South Vietnam. Never did get down there. We would watch, we had scopes, had radar and all that kind of stuff, and we would watch, it looked like we assumed they were taking off. They'd take off straight line, and they'd go and wander around, and then they'd go into China and then come back. But they never did come close to the DMZ because they knew that our guys were, going to knock them out. One of the things that an officer was responsible for doing in there, and it was always the junior officer that got, or the green officer that got the privilege before he figured out how not to do it, was to pay the troops, just like in the movies. They're in a big long line and you hand out cash. But you didn't pay them with real money. You paid them with military payment certificates. Now, the only place you could spend these certificates was at the PX. You could buy American. It was just be American type stuff. But we all knew that that was the currency used by the Vietnamese. You know, they got military MPCs and they would buy and sell and everything. So you'd go to the battalion and get your money. You'd have to count it before you left to make sure that they gave you the right amount of money. Then you go back and you divvy it out. Well, I was $10 short. And that really, so you knew the guy that got it knew it. And he didn't own up. And at that time, I was paid $303.90 a month. So $10 was a bunch of bread to me.
Yeah.
But I didn't have any place to spend it anyway. But I mean, it just made me upset. Only the officers were armed when I first got there with .45 caliber pistols. I wore mine for 2 or 3 days, and so I was the only one wearing one. I mean, none of the other officers, nobody else was wearing a firearm, so it was heavy. So I put it in my locker. Tet offensive came.
What was that now?
Tet, it's the Lunar New Year for the Vietnamese. I can't remember. It might be just Tet as the.
Yeah. That's what it's.
I don't think initials. I'm not sure stand for anything.
Right.
But it's big festivities for them. I mean, they really. One of the main things they did was they paid off all their debts during Tet. That was just some, that was part of their culture. Well, they came and did a lot of devastation. It lasted from February the 10th to February the 17th. It was nationwide. It was all across Vietnam. None at Chu Lai, except for one stray rocket. It hit an ammo dump on the base. And it really made the Vietcong upset because that's where they got all their ammo. And somebody done blew it up.
Dexter, when you say you were stationed at Chu Lai, was Chu Lai a province or was it a town?
It was a town.
Because Bobby was killed close to Chu Lai.
Yeah.
That's what they said.
Yeah, it was a town. It was a big enough to be on the map, and have a little bit of stuff around it. So, but I'm not real sure what the normal population is, because it was a bunch of military.
How many military were there? Do you have any idea?
Well, they had an air base. It was an air wing there, and they had us, and battalion headquarters was there. So, and the medical facilities was there. So it was a pretty good thing. The hospital was there. One of the hospitals was there. So I say it's pretty good size. The village close by, it was a fair-sized village too, but a little bit on that later.
But you didn't, in July, were there kids that came up to you that you were scared of because you didn't know if they had a bomb strapped to them?
No. There were, well, I wasn't in Chula that much. Most of the time I was on the battery site. So there was nobody there except us
Okay.
Marines.
Yeah.
So, no, I didn't have that problem. Now, one of the things they let new officers do is go into the village. And I can't remember the name of the village, but we went in and we had a little bit to eat and had a little bit to drink. This Vietnamese, I think she acted like the proprietor. She came up and bit me on the nose. Not hard, she just bit me on the nose. I didn't know if that was some sort of signal or whatever. She was, sort of attractive, but not that much. I hadn't been in Vietnam that long. So, wasn't that attractive to me.
Did you ever find out what the purpose of that was?
No, I didn't even ask the guys. Those three. They got a big kick out of it.
Oh, I bet.
I might would have asked somebody
I
that.
think I would have asked.
Well, I didn't know. A lot of things you think about if it's already gone.
Right.
You still remember it after all these years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like I say, it was boring there. You have things like that stand out.
Yeah.
All right. After the Tet Offensive sort of died down, well, let me say this. The National, did I say how many died? 3,895 U.S. personnel died. 62,800 Vietcong North Vietnamese died. 62,800. Wow. The national media blew it up like they had wiped us up. They had just beat us all to pulp. And we didn't. All we had to do, if we'd been smart, then just, march into North Vietnam, because they didn't have anybody to guard then. They were all dead. So
this false news back then.
Huh.
Like today.
Walter Cronkite was, he said he was the one that lost the war for us.
Oh, wow.
He did. Yeah, he did. And but they didn't do the numbers. It was just they came in and disrupted what we were doing. Which was, anybody can do that. You can throw a firebomb or something like that. But the real results of it is they lost miserably. They got the poop bit out of it.
Now, this is probably going to be a dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How did you know how many Vietcong North Viet were killed? How did?
It's in the history books.
How did anybody know?
They just do an estimate.
Okay.
And they find graves, and when they came up, when we wiped them out, there was 300 in a pile, and they just, they do estimates. Yeah, and there's a lot of false reporting then, because it got to be so bad that they made, before you could report a kill, you had to have an ear. An ear. That way, they knew that you had killed somebody.
Wow.
Because, they kept saying, well, we shot 75. And, they didn't believe them, so it got to be so bad, so they said, well, bring us an ear. I don't know how long that lasted. Not very long, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, the next day, there was no ground attack in Chulai. There was really no attack other than that stray rocket that came in. There was no ground attack, but we decided that we ought to check our weapons. Chulai, Vietnam was not in a war zone. There was no war going on. You were not ready to fight because it wasn't a war. It was everywhere else. But we decided we better check our weapons. So we checked we had M14s, 45 caliber pistols. The Army already had the M16s, but we still had the 14s. Had M60 machine guns, which was a small 7.62 millimeter caliber machine gun. You could carry it, and a 50 caliber machine gun. Now that's the big boy. You can tear some people up with that. So we checked the M60s, and they were good. checked the 50 caliber, and it fired once. You know, it's a machine gun. It fired once, and then you had to crank it to eject the shell. Fire again, and do it. When somebody had cleaned it, or whatever, they had put the ejection lever in upside down so that it would not eject the shell automatically. So if we had been in, you know,
A battle.
a ground battle, we would have been in really big trouble. Later on, I don't know, maybe a week or 2 weeks. Let me say this first. My total time in Vietnam was 41 days. So when I say later on, that ain't a big stretch of time. So, and my total time in Vietnam before I got hit was 30 days, or 31. I never can remember. So when I say later on, it's not that much
Relative.
later.
Yeah.
It's all relative. But later on, Larry Schreiber, who was one of the guys that David Thompson talked into skydiving, came down to see me. He was, I don't know if he was stationed or he just in Da Nang or what, but he came down to see me. We had a long night at the Staff NCO Club. And let me explain something about that. I wasn't Staff NCO. The Staff NCO had a club on site. The officers could not have a club on site because there was an officers club in July. And if the batteries had officers club, nobody would go to the officers club in July. So they would lose money. So they wouldn't let the officers have clubs, you know, on their side. So NCOs being, you know, there's 30-year men, and you know they'd been around everywhere, and so they had a Staff NCO club. They had Jack Daniels. They had Budweiser. They had whatever you wanted. I don't remember any wine, but I can't picture a Marine drinking wine. You know, it's just not. That's not the right picture.
No.
So, I mean, it had everything you wanted to. I don't remember paying, but I'm sure it did, because I mean, I drank. And Larry and I stayed up there a pretty good bit. When I was on bourbon, so it's probably Jack Daniels, and being from, you know, close to Lynchburg, I had to drink Jack Daniels. So we stayed up there a pretty good bit. I woke up the next morning as the battalion surgeon was wrapping my head in bandage. So during the night, somebody had thrown a grenade off the hill behind us. It landed in the sand. If it hadn't landed in the sand, I wouldn't be here. Landed in the sand about 5 yards away. The kill radius of a grenade is 10 yards. When I say kill radius, I mean 100% kill radius. Everything in that range you're gone. So it must have landed in the sand. It knocked a hole in the plywood about that big around. Hit me in the head, hit me in the neck, the shoulder, and the thumb. Other than my head, the thumb was the most painful. It took a plug out of my thumb. You couldn't sew it up and everything, so it was just raw meat. You know, it hurt. You could bandage it, but you know it wouldn't stay home. The troops wanted to get me to. I wasn't seriously injured. I mean, not serious, but I wasn't seriously injured. I wasn't bleeding, so they didn't helicopter me over. They sent me over in a truck. So the troops were driving me over to the hospital, and they were going to get there quick. And Vietnam, it's all sand, or in July it was all sand. And if you ever have driven on sand, it develops ruts. They haul me in what they call a 6x, which has a steel plate for the bed, no springs, 0 springs. So, they'd hit these bumps and, go up. I'd bounce about that high. And after about the second bounce, I explained to them how this wasn't going to happen. And it was about to kill me. So they dropped down and went slower. Now, did I say how many places they threw grenades? I don't think I did. They threw it at the Staff NCO club. There were still some people up there. Threw it at the officer's hut, where I was. Threw it at the Staff NCO's hut. And at the cook's hut. I don't know. Like, the food was outstanding. I mean, it was really good. So, whoever it was on, either grass or heroin or something, or drunk or something.
Oh, it was one of our people.
Yeah, it was a friendly. I didn't get a Purple Heart. They don't give you Purple Hearts for young guys. The battery was situated on a hill. It was sort of a plateau. So he just walked along the hill and threw the grenades. Those people guarding had guards up. So somebody saw him.
But you never knew who it was.
Well, 22 years later, one of the warrant officers that was in the hut with me was going to Florida. I don't know, he had a memory like an elephant. He remembered that I lived in Fayetteville. So he called, I guess he called Andy Dexter Sullivan, and asked me if I'd been wounded in Vietnam, and I said, yeah. And he said, well, I can't remember his name. He said, I was there. And I said, let me come get you, so let's talk. So I went and picked him up at out there on the Shovel Highway. It used to be, anyway, Frankie Reed's old furniture store, the 7-Eleven.
Armstrong's.
Yeah, Armstrong.
Yeah.
Trying to think of him. So I went and picked him up. Came home. Like I say, it's 22 years later, July the 4th. And he didn't know that Stanley had died on the 4th. So we talked and talked. And he said, did you ever find out who it was? And I said, no. And he told me. And he was in the other battery, other platoon, so I didn't know him. And again, I was only there 30 days. So I didn't know him. And he said, I said, will they do anything to him? He said, well, it took a while to find out, but they found out who it was, and he was on the way to the base to fly out and come home and be discharged out of the Marine Corps.
Because of that?
No.
Or just
his
time?
His time was up. And the battalion commander decided to not charge him because it would be too much trouble. So this warrant officer that was a friend of mine, he was going to stay in for 30, and he said, give me my damn discharge papers now. I'm out of here. If this, whatever. All right. Now I'm
can't blame you either.
Yeah. One of the things that they guard about is if you're wounded, the obvious wound they know, and they check and make sure that you're not wounded somewhere else, that you're bleeding to death. So they stripped me down and had me stand up so I could stand up. Then they took me into surgery. Before they took me into surgery, they shaved my head, which nearly killed me. I mean, I said, please put me to sleep. Go ahead and put me to sleep. So shave my head then. And I think it was a enlisted man. He said, I got me an officer. I'm going to get him.
Probably.
Another chicken shack was where I went. There's probably about 20 of us in that thing. You know, plywood, tin roof, plywood floor, you know, the whole 9 yards. Had cotton in my ears, put my pillow in a U shape. Remember, I got a headache. There was a Vietnamese child in there that had been shot through the head. So he was a vegetable, and he moaned and groaned all night. They didn't put him in with enlisted because they was afraid enlisted would kill him. They probably would have. Because some of those, you know, the Marines in the battery, like I said, was born, and they were Marines. You know, they wanted to kill something because they're in Vietnam, and I think that was one of the reasons why that kid did it. But anyway, I knew his name, never did do anything about it. I don't have any ill feelings, you know, toward him. Got me an early retirement, medical retirement, paid for life. Anyway, so then about 10, 11 days later, couldn't move my left leg. And the surgeon came by and visited and everything. I said, hey, I can't lift my left leg. He said, no problem. I said, the hell it isn't. That's my leg. He said, it'll be all right. So I figured I'm going to have to do something. So I started exercising my leg. When I first started off, I didn't move it. I just, you know, thought, you know, said brain, move my leg. And it tensed my muscles a little bit, and finally got it to where I could lift it up 6 inches. I can't go to the bathroom in a pan. I can't go to the bathroom in a bottle. I mean, I just can't do it. I couldn't then, I can't now. My bed was right in front of the nurse's station. Evidently, I was serious when they came, or most serious when I came in, so I got the prime spot. To go to urinate, what I did is I took the sheet, put it up like this, took the pint milk bottle down like this, and urinated. Felt so good. Felt so good.
Yeah.
I don't remember defecating, but I'm sure I did because I was in there, you know, 11 days.
Yeah.
But I don't remember. But anyway, I got to be ambulatory. I went, you know, got to go to the 4-holer down the way. And it took me about 15 minutes to go, and it was probably 10 yards because, you know, I couldn't move very fast. And then the next they sent me to Tonsanuk, right outside of Chulai. While I was there, they had a mortar attack, and we had to get up and go to a bunker. Well, the bunker was made out of sandbags, and the sandbags were leaning like that. And I looked at that and said, well, somebody's got to go over here and push just a little bit, and all those sandbags are going to cave down and kill all of us. The only person in that unit that had a weapon was a nurse. She was probably 240 pounds. She had a waist as big as that chair. The web belt, you know, you can extend it out until it's that long. It wouldn't go around her waist. I mean, she had that 45 on her hip, and I said, oh, no. You know, I've got out of this, and I'm going to get into this. So then I had to sleep on the floor, and the floor was a concrete thing, and it had the little pebbles. It was where you put pebbles in your concrete, and then you sort of spray it a little bit, and it looks good. Yeah. Got the little pebbles sticking up. Well, it's not very good on sleeping. So then I went to Japan. Met a guy that I had been in basic school with, Tony Shaw. Or the night before I was going to leave, I met him in the bathroom. And he said, how long you been here? And I said, 3 days. He said, you're going home tomorrow? I said, yeah. So I've been here 3 weeks. Who do you know? And I didn't realize that, but I started thinking that my daddy probably stirred the pot. Cause of Stanley and cause of me. Yeah. He probably stirred the pot. Every politician and, military man he knew, he bent their ear. But I was in and out quick. Forgot this part. I told you about the thumb. Really painful. And I wrote Mother and Daddy, told them that it was going to be, I wouldn't be a long letter because I injured my thumb and it was very painful and I, couldn't write very much. And it said, I told them I'm okay and I'll be home soon. Well, that last sentence sent up all kind of alarm bells. So they knew that I was bad. That was the first they had heard that I was injured. Now, I've been through, 7, 8, 10 days, and the bells got to get through there. That's that battalion commander, that didn't prosecute. He was worthless. But anyway, then they sent me, I'm on my way home. They sent me to Millington, Tennessee. You know where Millington is? Right north of Memphis. They try to get you as close to home as they can. It's a Navy base. By this time, I'm ambulatory. In Japan, just about anybody, the uniform in Japan was pajamas, house shoes, and a bathrobe, because everybody was wounded. And so we could just, we went to the PX, went to the movie, went to eat in a bathrobe, So I was ambulatory when I got to Millington. I slept at the hospital. They made me sleep there at night. And during the day, I was gone. Don Reed and I played paddleball. Don mercifully just stomped me every time. Of course, I had an excuse. I'd just been wounded.
Yeah, right.
But went out. I think it was when I went to see the Globetrotters. Came back, and the captain in the room that I was sharing with was under his bed. I said, "Excuse me, sir. What are you doing?" He said, "A tornado just came through, and they want all of us sleep under the beds." I said, "Excuse me, sir, but tornadoes don't linger here. They're here and gone." I told him I had slept on the floor in Vietnam, and I'd be damned if I was going to do it in Tennessee. So the at the same time, Martin Luther King was assassinated in Memphis while I was there. So I saw a bunch of Jeeps rolling around, had M14 stuck out each, window, everything. I said, "Oh, deliver me. I got out of Vietnam and going to get shot by a grocery clerk." So the doctor wrote up analysis and prognosis and everything on it. And he put on a bunch of medical and all this kind of. On the first place, lost slice of, and I turned it over and it said brain. And I said, "Well, what?" He said, "Well, it wasn't much. They had to get the bone fragments out." So I didn't know I'd lost any in my brain, but evidently it wasn't much. Went through the disability, whatever. They assessed mine at 80%. Then it went upstairs and came back and it's 70%. That was all right with me. So I was getting out. And I asked him, and he said, "You're getting a medical retirement." I said, "What's that?" He says, "Well, you get out of the Marine Corps, and you get the same privileges as if you'd been retired for 20 or been in for 20 years and retire with a pension, whatever. Sign me up. I lost that thought.
Did you have any trouble from this injury throughout your life?
Yeah. The first thing, problem, you get injured on the right side of your brain affects the left side of your body.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
I had loss of sensory perception on my left side. So what's that mean? It means it's sort of asleep all the time. It was bad, but you know, as 50 years has gone by, it's gone. First thing I had to do is I had my brother's Mustang, 65 Mustang, bronze, 4 on the floor, beautiful car.
I remember that car.
Yeah, it was just I wish I had it now, but I had a 4 on the floor, so I had to get rid of it because I couldn't shift gears.
Oh.
Couldn't push with that thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, couldn't hear out of the left side, my left ear. As technology has advanced, I've got 2 hearing aids in now. This is for, from the injury. This is from old age. The first hearing aid I got went to Kentucky to get it. I don't know why Kentucky. But I wore a pair of glasses. Didn't wear glasses at that time. I wore glasses. They put the microphone in the ear, ran it through the glasses, and put an earpiece in this ear so I could hear. So I could hear both sides with one ear.
Right.
That didn't work worth a damn. You couldn't tell where anybody was coming from. So, and I was going back to school. So what I did is I just sat on the front row. I never sat on the front row in my life, but since I couldn't hear, I started sitting on the front row. That's, and that's about the only effect now that I can think of. But came back, went to school, got me an MBA, got monthly retirement, ended up back in Fayetteville, dated some wonderful people, Linda Williams for one, got 3 great daughters, 6 great daughters, 6 grandchildren, got 2 grandsons, and a wife who is out, God is good.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. Dexter Sullivan's been on our program today, and we appreciate you telling all these stories and remembering it so well. That's a long time ago, but we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Anything else you can think of? Linda, you got any questions?
I'm amazed at the work he's put into this to be able to do this, and I appreciate it.
Well, that's you have to blame Carrie for that, because you'll see one of those pieces of paper there said, "When you're dead and gone, nobody's going to remember it, and your children are not going to remember it." It says, "I don't know what you did,
Exactly.
so I want you to write it down." And that's about 13 pages up there. So
She told me that.
Yeah.
She told me that you had done that, and it's awesome, Dexter, because once y'all are gone, this history's gone.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do here.
Well, I thank you for all those.
Thank you, and thank God.
Thank you. We've been coming to you today from the Warrior exhibit right here in Fayetteville, Tennessee, and Linda Williams has been with me, and we appreciate Dexter Sullivan for telling his stories and telling us about Vietnam, and we appreciate your life. We appreciate your service, sir.
Thank you.
Absolutely.